It was an age of exploration. It was an era for dedicated discoverers to set sail for uncharted experiences, in search of a new way of life, in search of it. And like the seafaring explorers of our collective histories, I begin my own private exploration, my own modern-day quest for it. Had a nice show. I woke today from a dream of a journey of mine that started 7 years ago. 7 years. It's a lot of years, but not really enough. I wish I'd started some things sooner, but I guess I'm just lucky to have started when I did. You know, thinking back, I remember a lot. I remember a whole lot. I remember setting sail that summer in search of it. Friends said you'd never know what to expect of it unless you go. So I arrived at my destination, not really knowing what to expect, not really knowing what it was. Once I got there, I remember standing outside a wall that's long since been torn down now, and the place was jamming with all sorts of colorful characters. Was this it? I remember walking through the gates and into the long concourse that is, of course, no longer there. The sights and the sounds and even the smells fused together into a collective wholeness. But was this it? And then I remember making my way through the stands and waiting with the other tens of thousands of spectators, standing next to each other, tippy-toed on the benches that are, of course, no longer there. And when I think back, I can hear the rising noise in the stands. The level of which just swelled way up there. And as my body began to tingle, I wondered if this was it. And just then, the crowd roared the loudest. And that's when the music began to play. This has got to be it. It was the party of a lifetime. It was excitement and adventure. It was opportunity and involvement. It was the Grateful Dead and its legendary culture of faithful followers, the Deadheads. And long before the first chord was struck on the first night of a show, believe me, the family would roll into town by any means possible.
All minivans and buses stay in your left-hand lane.
The day would be filled with frolicking and reunions between old friends, high expectations for that night's singularly unique performance. And when the sun went down, that's when the show would begin. And then things would really begin to shine.
Hey, Bob, here's the Dead concert.
Well, it seemed that there were an extraordinary number of really excellent Philly shows, a lot of historic moments.
Well, I mean, it was kind of a new experience to me. I'd, go in there and as soon as the music started, and people just folded up all the chairs and piled them up in one big pile, and everybody just started all this strange dancing, And I was, it's pretty cool,
Music. I like listening to them play. I like listening to them improvise. See, it's a rapport that they have between themselves and the audience, and it's a two-way street, which is really, really a nice thing. When you have communication between the audience and the band, and they can take you on a little ride, and then you can sort of respond to that, and it goes in both directions.
What I'm saying is the music. The music sucks you in. I can remember a time where I was out in the courtyard, the outside area of the Spectrum, and I was like I could hear the music, and I'd go into the doorway, and I'd hear the music to kind of suck me in, and I'd want to do this, but I knew, reality, I had to find my friends, and I wasn't really sure, because it was general admission, and we had just taken seats. I had to find them, and I knew one side of me said I had to find the guys, but the other side heard the band. I was like, I just wanted to go into the music. It's like, it sucks you in.
They working in the front of the aisle, the girls would sit on the guys' shoulders, and then the girls, they pushed the girls forward to the security so the girls would want to go up on the stage, but we would have to push them back because no people were allowed past the barrier. And the girls would holler at us, "Oh, come on, let us go up." I said, no way, you can't go up there.
I mean, the thing about the Dead that excited me whenever I saw them was not only the music but the words. It was like a circus, like the Barnum and Bailey, like all the good things about America and Americana. They gripped it with their words, they gripped it with their music. At times it was a struggle, but when it was a struggle, they'd bring it back. I mean,
so when the pitch builds, it's just like wildfire. One person starts to know, and the next person starts, can feel it, and it's like popping popcorn. Like one goes off, and then another one goes off. Pretty soon, the whole thing's popping, and 20,000 people are all popping at the same time, and you don't think about it when it's happening, but afterwards, it's like, whew, yeah, that was it.
The second set is always something I've really enjoyed at a Dead show. You've had the first set, and the first set's always fun, but the second set is always something special. There's always these songs that you hope they play, and when they kick into it, and it's a song that you were hoping they'd play, and they actually do, there's just nothing like it.
One of the most striking things to me was, I don't think anywhere else in my experience have I seen attractive people and unattractive people mingle without any regard for how attractive they are. Strikingly beautiful women walking around with men who really looked like they hadn't bathed since World War II. And
several of the Philly shows, they played some very unusual selections, and Philly was a good city for being a Deadhead because they played here a lot.
One thing that's always struck me as being really interesting is the proliferation of Grateful Dead stuff on the web and out there in on the internet. And I have to say that I was really clueless. I knew nothing about this world, and yet I would go out on site and I'd see screensavers and psychedelic patterns on people's desktops, and music would play in little QuickTime movies. In any case, I was curious, so I asked a good friend of mine who was a little more into the Dead than I was, but still functional, to bring me along to a concert. And so he did, and it was a pretty remarkable experience. I don't know what I should tell you. What was the most striking thing about the concert? Well, not the concert. I'd say the parking lot.
I had a friend who was really into them, and he played me the records and everything like that, and I thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. And he said, well, you have to go to a show if you really want to find out what it's all about. And so we actually tried to go in '86 when they were touring with Dylan and Tom Petty. It was in Buffalo. We thought it was at night, but it was in day, so we went like 100 miles an hour from here to Buffalo. Just missed the Dead. So, but got to see Dylan, but I also got to see the crowd, and it was such a wild scene, tons of people, everybody, the jugglers, people whirling dervishes. I said, I got to see this for real, and when I went.
Well, I think my first show was the Meadowlands, and I had just gotten a job working at an Indian clothing store in a mall, And I showed up and I had an extra ticket. And so I asked a woman who was working there if she knew anybody who wanted to go see the Dead. And she was the manager of the clothing store. And she said, well, yeah, I'd like to go. And so she quit her job, and the two of us went off to see the Dead at the Meadowlands.
I was living in Boston. Some college friends said, let's go to see the Grateful Dead. So we all got together, and we were really excited. And the minute I got there and I heard the music, I knew that I was a Deadhead forever. I just loved the music.
The best show I ever saw?
In Philadelphia.
Probably the most memorable for me is the first one I ever saw, for the simple reason that they were doing, Bill Graham was introducing them one by one, and they sort of floated right into Help Slip Franklin's, just like on the record. So that sort of put the hairs up in the back of my neck at that point.
Where was that?
It was at the Tower Theater in 1976. Have any of the Philadelphia shows been incredibly memorable? I think that, in terms of whom I am as a person and as a musician, what's memorable, I'll say again, is the quality of the music and the quality of the human interaction. I've met some of the most amazing people at shows.
And over the course of about 7 years or so, in between the other pushes and pulls of life, school, work, things like that, I must have taken in a couple dozen shows. It's an embarrassing statistic in some circles, but hey, what can I say? Man, those shows, though, they're so tough to describe. I would go to let loose and have a good time, but I also found I would go to become more a part of the culture and the community. And yeah, to become part of the music as well. Spectrum shows were great. But I remember dreaming of the day that I would pick up my things and tour with the Dead.
And they wanted to bring their music out to everybody real nice. And I want to tell you, he had a following. I would tell you, people would follow that band coast to coast. They would live outside in campers, cook outside, and when they would go into a Grateful Dead concert, they were like spaced out. They didn't know what they were doing. When their music played, they danced like our mummers, doing the strut.
Yeah, I went to both shows at RFK. Thankfully, I stayed because my wife had to go to work the next day, and I begged her and pleaded that I could stay for the next night, and thank God. Second set, Jerry rolling and tumbling, Muddy Waters, and I guess I started seriously, tripping around the country around 79, 80, right around that period. It was also quite lucrative for me at the time because I was involved in silk screening, print art, and textile, T-shirt design. At that time. Believe it or not, tie-dyes was kind of the forgotten, the lost art. It was big in the 60s. It was never really exploited, and about that time, I was exposed to some people from, I think, Tennessee, in a place called the Hog Farm. And they were gracious enough to show me some of their trade secrets. The tie-dye, which really, once again, blew my mind. I really dug intricate tie-dye, mandalas, that sort of stuff. So got into that and worked around most of the East Coast, occasionally going west, selling T-shirts and listening to the Grateful Dead night after night.
One thing about the show in Jamaica, the Jamaica World Music Festival, was when the B-52s came on, all the Jamaicans were saying to us, because they had heard about the Grateful Dead, is this the Dead? And we're like, no, this isn't the Dead, this is the B-52s. And that was kind of funny.
There's supposed to be a difference between the West Coast shows and the East Coast shows. I'm not sure that I really can say it very clearly, but I think the East Coast shows, the people get very, very excited, and they're always going, yay, Jerry, yay, yay, and they're so hyper, and they they just can't control themselves. They're just so excited. At West Coast, they're more a little quiet, and they say, "Oh, the music, it's so beautiful." They say it in sort of a quiet, California kind of a way.
It was an interesting development in the early 80s when the Dead first started selling tour books through the mail order. You could order an entire tour book in one envelope, you know, so that you would get the envelope with an entire, it's like you open the tickets and be like, well, gee, I think I know what I'm doing for the next 3 weeks, you know. And what would happen is each city you would go to, you would see the same people sitting in the general vicinity of yourself that you saw in the last city. You know, because obviously they were just sitting at the Dead office peeling off the tickets, you know. And I met people who I still are friends with today through that kind of thing. You know, it's like, hey, glad you made it, you know, how was your trip, you know. There's a lot of time where you're sitting there waiting for the band to come on, you know, you got to make friends. And the single largest influence, the entire reason I ever bought a guitar was that man, you know. It was Jerry, you know. He brought it to a level where I was like, I gotta do that, you know. It's like I gotta be able to get more involved in that, you know.
It was the level and the intensity of the music, the quality of the music, the idiosyncrasies of the music that really got me and just touched something inside me.
Well, Jerry was kind of like a butterfly on a guitar, I think. I mean, he was...
Those wonderful, melodic, rocking Jerry solos that could just take you to another place and keep you there smiling and bring you back after a while, place you back down gently.
I remember one time at RFK when they played Help on the Way, Slipknot, Franklin's Tower to open the second set, and that was just exhilarating. It was so good.
No favorites are, just all his music was good.
I love Ripple and Box of Rain. I like the old time ones, and then there's a lot of songs I like that I kind of like the improvisational parts of like Eyes of the World and Estimated Prophet, and I like China Rider. The thing about favorite songs, Dead songs, you could have like 4 dozen favorites.
The thing that's so impressive about them is the fact that the way they play together, they sort of create things that happen as they happen, and one thing spawns the next thing that occurs. It's very impressive.
My favorite Dead song. That would require actually knowing the title of one of their songs, and that renders me unqualified. Are you sure you want me in your film?
Garcia's really wild improvisational outness, but in the cohesion of the Dead as an improvising unit, and a band that could consistently, night after night, go out and just lay this amazing shit down. It staggers me sometimes. I think of what they were doing live.
Yeah, the music was like nothing else. And people speak to a certain magic in the way the Dead play together. And it is definitely something that rubbed off on their loyal fans. I mean, some of the best sounds would happen outside the walls of the local venue.
I think we went with $40 or $50, and the balloons cost $5 each, and they're nitrous oxide. And you know, I turned around to my friend after spending $40 or $50 on these balloons, and said, you know, I'm really glad they don't take Visa because we'd never leave. So.
I think I found a certain part of it in the way the music was interpreted by the fans. And it could be a group thing or an individual thing.
Sometimes at dead shows, it's hard to explain what the proverbial it is, but I mean, it's just like with some kind of just all around encompassing good type feeling, magic in the air, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, just sometimes the band would hit that spot, other times maybe not, but most of the time I've ever seen them, at least 1 or 2 points in the show. I mean, it goes so far out there that it happens, and it is really hard to explain,
Okay, describe blue to somebody who's blind. I mean, come on, try and describe the indescribable to someone who hasn't. It's an emotional. I mean, it's emotional as much as it is anything else. I mean, coming from where I sit,
What is it? What is it?
I have no idea.
It's sharing. It's a good community. It's like, you know what it is? It's the opposite of paranoia. Is what it is.
No, it's pretty much indescribable. It's just, it's best described in a line in one of their songs. It's when the music plays the band. It's more or less when the music that you're playing takes over you rather than you sort of have control over it. It's kind of a hard thing to explain.
Well, there are a lot of definitions for being Deadhead, and a lot of people like to make up lists, but it basically means you're extremely enthusiastic about the Grateful Dead, and some of the things that would be included on the list that you could say someone is a Deadhead if would be things like going to another city to see a show, mail ordering every tour, knowing things like what 10, 11, 77 means.
I don't know what deadhead means anymore. I really don't. I mean, you can't look at somebody nowadays and say this guy's a deadhead or that guy's a deadhead or that gal's not or she is. It mostly has to do with what's inside. Deadheads range anywhere from your typical Joe Sixpack kind of guy to the real hardcore, the other extreme, completely liberal, hippy-dippy, I can't believe I'm saying this, rainbow gathering time. I mean, I leaned a little more in that direction about 10, 15 years ago, so, yeah.
Well, that's a label that comes with a lot of connotations that are not exactly pleasing to me. But I can't deny the fact that I would consider myself a deadhead.
I imagine a lot of true deadheads do a lot of traveling with going to every show and enjoying the scene and the camaraderie and everything, because there is a whole lot of that. Like I said, there's a lot of good people surrounded with it, and
after my one concert and my little experience of that concert, I have to admit that, if I don't have understanding, I at least have empathy, and my relationship to Deadheads is similar to my relationship to Catholics. I was raised Catholic. I'm not a Catholic, but I'm always defending them when people like to beat up on them. And I guess that's kind of how I feel about people who choose to follow the dead around and make their living by selling grilled cheese sandwiches.
After all this time, I was actually getting a grasp of what it really was. The next tour would definitely take me to a deeper understanding of it. My mail order tickets were already out for the fall tour. And then he died. Death. Even for those who sing about it, don't have no mercy. It was as if the bright blue ball just spinning free, suddenly stopped. Jerry was gone. He left the planet. It was over.
First of all, I'm not really considering myself a Deadhead. I've never even been to a show, but I did actually attend a sort of live Dead experience this summer because I went out to the West Coast and I attended a conference in LA and was going out to visit my brother who lives in San Francisco. And I think the middle of the conference, I think it was a Wednesday, 2 days before we were going to San Francisco, I talked to my wife that night and she said, "Oh, did you hear Jerry Garcia died?" And I said, "No, but that I knew different people that I knew would be very much affected by it, and I didn't know if they knew because they were out somewhere else." So I said, "Oh well," and then that was about the end of it.
When Jerry died, I was at my home, and my wife was at work, and a friend of mine, who I don't see that often, but she knows I'm into the Dead. That's all we really talk about is the Dead. And she called and said, "Jerry Garcia died." And I was in shock for a while, and so I started calling people, and we were all consoling each other, but I was still really in shock about the whole thing. And then when my wife came home, we just burst into tears together because she had heard on the radio. And it was definitely like losing a friend.
I was up in a place called Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, and I do timber framing as a profession. That's what I do in my full-time job. And I was working on a steeple of a church up there, and this guy that was in charge of the project just called in a lot of timber framers from all over Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio area to come work on the steeple. And I was up there for that time when, and I heard about Jerry on the radio, and I was working with a couple carpenters from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and I told them, I said, I just heard Jerry Garcia died, and they said, "Who's that?" So I mean, like, here I was, I was up there, and I had nobody to commiserate with, and it was a tough day, I mean, something that really meant a lot to me, and I had a lot of fun with it over the past 10 or 15 years. It seemed like it was kind of coming to an end.
And I will never forget that. It was like when JFK died. I went to see Bobby at Rat Dog in Central Park, and I was staying at my friend's in New York. So when Jerry died, I was in New York, but I didn't know it. And when I got home from New York, my daughter came up to me and she was crying. She said, "Oh, Mom, Jerry died." And I was so shocked, even though everybody had been saying that Jerry was going to die, but I was still really shocked. So the first thing we did was we got onto the well, the computer conference, and we wanted to make sure it was really true. And then it became clear that it was true, and everybody was writing different things on the well. People just didn't know what to do. And 12 people called me, and all these people that I barely knew called me and said they were sorry. And it was just so profoundly shocking for Deadheads. We didn't really know what it meant. It wasn't that we lived with Jerry on a day-to-day basis, but he was a very important part of our lives.
I was at work actually sitting at my computer and got an email from a friend of mine, and turned it on, or turned on the radio instantly, and heard I think it was a Broke Down Palace, which is a song that you'd never ever hear on the radio, and that kind of confirmed it definitely for me. And the weird thing about it was it's always one of those things that the Deadheads always joke about, like, "Ooh, what's going to happen when Jerry dies?" Or and then it came to me, like, after all of that joking and all of that whatever in your mind, that this was it. This was the day Jerry died. So it was gone. Everyone kind of knew it, and it was weird to actually be experiencing this thing that you thought about thousands of times before, but never actually imagined,
happening?
I was driving my car, unemployed at the time, which I'm not anymore, by the way. And I headed over to see a friend to do some taping, actually, and listening to a local radio station, WXPN. Hey, and the DJ at the time came on and was kind of broken up and announced that Jerry had passed, and then played Terrapin Station, and I kind of had to pull over, and it was like, well, wait a minute, that can't possibly be true. It was one of those unreal moments, you hear the music in the background, when your greatest fear comes true, what do you do, But I pulled over and I sat there for a few minutes, and then I went to I found a 7-Eleven like a few hundred yards down, and started digging out a pocket full of quarters and trying to confirm the information with folks that I knew, and yeah, it was true.
And little did I know that 2 days later I would be up in San Francisco visiting my brother, who happens to live about 5 blocks or so from Haight-Ashbury. And I went up there, and there was a small but quickly growing gathering of deadheads who were commiserating and also partying. And surprisingly enough, none of them were playing Dead songs. They were playing a lot of Beatles songs. Not very well, but they were playing them with honesty and whatever, forthright. So it was kind of amusing, and so at least I knew the lyrics, so like "Hey Jude" and all. And that went on for quite a while, and there was a little memorial that was being built, and people were bringing different Jerry and Dead things, and it was slowly taking shape. Lots of candles, lots of pictures, flowers going down. It happened to be right next to Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and they were in Ben & Jerry's giving some donation for everyone that bought Jerry Garcia ice cream. Unfortunately, I don't like Jerry Garcia ice cream, so I bought vanilla chocolate chunk, which incidentally you can't get on the East Coast anymore. So it was quite a thrill for me to be able to have vanilla chocolate chunk ice cream, and the rest could have their Jerry Garcia and give whatever money to the cause. On Saturday, we were told that there would be this event Sunday, and there was actually an article in the paper saying it would start, I think, at 9, and it would be a low-key event. Probably the Dead wouldn't be there, and they'd have some sort of parade. Supposedly, that was the place where the Dead had played many free shows, so they said maybe we would have it there. It was a very long parade with a lot of Mardi Gras-esque floats, or at least one or two going along. And there was quite a few people there. There was quite a few thousand. I don't know the exact count, but it was pretty full. And then at the end there was 2 dragons. I think there was a colorful dragon and there was a white dragon. And at that time, I was informed that there were many band members who were in this parade, drumming and such.
We are celebrating ourselves. We are celebrating the great spirit of our brother and our friend. Remember that he has played his role, his part. The rest is left to you and I. The fat man rocks out. in, says Bill.
The highest moment of my life is when the band's playing and cooking. I'm playing with Jerry and these guys behind me. That's the best. There's nothing higher for me.
Everybody's asking the big question, and love is the answer.
Take your heart, take your face, and reflect back some of the joy that he gave you.
And now he's done with becoming, now he is being.
This means a lot to all of us, and you kept us going, you know, and you were the fuel. You were part of it, a big part of it. You should know that. Take that with you. We all love you for that.
The band members and everyone up on stage, but there's some other people we didn't know that had drums, came down and formed a drum circle actually in the audience or near the audience, and that was quite nice. I was wondering what security they would have, whether, it seemed like the parade was pretty free and open, but a lot of times with bands, they tend to keep the members aside, and there's always large security people, but to come into the crowd and do a drum circle was very touching, and it was very nice. I feel kind of lucky that I happened to be someone that just happened to plan there, because I would never go there on my own. I would never have flown in for that weekend on my own, unlike some people I know which might have gone or who may have gone, but it was truly a one-of-a-kind experience.
I collected every shred of newspaper, every article, every magazine that eulogized Jerry. I wanted to know if the rest of the world was feeling the way I did. I guess they were. Maybe I can take these words and these pictures and shape them into something all their own. It's funny how a picture can bring back the sounds of the scene and music from the shows and all the great stories of the whole experience that are out there.
It kind of amused me that it seemed like everybody was always selling things at Dead shows. So I think it was maybe about 1988 or 89 or so. Right around Halloween, they had some shows down at the Spectrum, and I was in the drugstore and I saw these little plastic rings, and there was like 50 of them for 89 cents. So I bought 3 or 4 packages of them, and I'll go down to the Dead show, and I figured, well, everybody's selling something, I want to give something away. So I would go up to people and I'd say, "Did you get your tour ring?" And they said, "Oh no, I don't want." I said, "No, I'm giving them away. You can have it." And then I give them their tour ring, and I say, "Are you touring with the band?" And yeah, of course, be a little chuckle. But I had so many of these things at a couple shows that, I had this bag here was just about filled with them, and I would take handfuls of them up from the second level and just toss them out into the crowd. It was fun. What the hell? You're there to have a good time, so.
But working 10 Grateful Dead concerts was great. Seeing and hearing the Grateful Dead was really nice. Most of my security jobs at the Grateful Dead were at the stage. And when I used to leave there at nights, I would smell like a weed. I would. My wife used to pick me up in town. She says, "Boy, Harry, were you smoking pot?" I said, "No, I wasn't. I was working at a Grateful Dead concert."
Well, I was living in the Southwest for about 10 years, and it was great because we got to go to California to outdoor shows. And one time we loaded up the car with the egg salad sandwiches and the provisions, and everybody got in the car, and Rasta Bear, who was John's dog, got in the car all the way in the back. That was where he rode. And we went off and drove to Ventura. 10 hours later we were there and got out of the car and we're hanging out, waiting to go into the show, which was, of course, on the beach at the Ventura County Rodeo grounds, which is an outdoor amphitheater on the beach. It was a neat thing. Anyway, so we were hanging out, and then it was time to go into the show, so we all started walking over toward the gate, and we said, well, okay, Rasta Bear, we'll see you in there. So the four of us went towards the gate, and the dog trotted off in another direction, and we went in there, and we're in the middle of the second set or something, and everything's really great, and everybody's dancing and having a great time, and we look down, and there's Rasta Bear. He made it in. So he hung out and danced with us, and, then the show was over, and it was time to leave, and we said, okay, Rasta Bear, we'll see you back at the car. So we went off in this direction, and Rasta Bear went over in that direction, and we got back to the car, and we were drinking lots of water and playing Frisbee and, hanging out. And sooner or later, here comes Rasta Bear. Hey, Rasta Bear, man, did you have a good show? And he just, he was the coolest dog. That was like his 7th or 8th show, I guess. We didn't go anywhere without him.
Really glad I took time to see that band last night. They were smoking, the music was pumping, the crowd was great, the whole scene was great. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was there, at least I thought it was. Music, the scene, people, the feeling that I got, it made the scene.
What is it? It's something that speaks to the emotions and allows your inner being to tap into.
I think the sense that it's possible to feel good and not focus on problems and politics and strife and all of the things that are so wrong in the world, to be able to be part of a large, happy, colorful, warm, and vibrant group of people who are there sharing something together.
It's really all about the music, and the music is it's some kind of spirituality, and it's something that's very deep. And I guess someone who gets it is somebody who really sees the depth of the beauty in the music.
It's great that so many people are coming back together. So many lovers of the Dead music. To feel like you're a part of the community again reminds me of what was, and who knows what could possibly be. I continue to wonder about it, and though I might feel it in other places, I still have fears that since Jerry's gone, it has gone with him. But then I recall some familiar words from a favorite Jerry song. He sings, thinking a lot about less and less, and forgetting the love we bring. I'm realizing now that there's truth in those words. I think that rather than pondering the things we don't have, the less and the less, our focus should be placed on the things that we can achieve. and to never forget about the things we can bring, like love and friendship and community, so that it may happen again. I guess for me, it is a continuous search, a never-ending journey that will always be something that is just out of reach. But that's okay. For me, it is that constant search. This long, strange trip is surely not over. And that's about it.